The quester has been roaming around from rock to rock and mountain to mountain till he reaches the top of a hill to view the chapel called Perilous Chapel. It's a wind's home, as people have stopped visiting the church, but the questing sensibility must reach the top to gather the grail from this place. It's a twilight time. We have already seen the image of a woman singing and working on a musical instrument in which she has tied her hair to fiddle the music. Now, we have some comments from the critics on this section. After the vision of the disintegrating city, the protagonist draws near. So this protagonist is nothing but a sensibility only. There is no hero visible there. It's only a questing, exploring sensibility, which draws near the chapel in this decayed hole among the mountains. The reader should recall these mountains from the first section. The quester has nearly reached the journey's end. Under the moonlight, he sees the dancing grass. The grass seems to be singing, as if the quester is welcome to the sight. This indicates the success of the night as he enters the empty chapel. At the top of the hill, which is full of wind coming from its broken windows. So it's a deserted church. A view of the hollowed spiritual center. The chapel, T.S. Eliot in his notes says, is more than a chapel, it's a perilous chapel of the Grail legend. And the perilous symmetry is also suggested, but they have lost their terror. The spirits have lost their terror, and hence their meaning. The spirit's abode is alone, only the wind's home. So this spiritual center is empty. It has become a place for winds only. In terms of the nature symbolism, it answers the doubt and denial. There is water announced in Ganga now in the next part. In the wasteland waits for it. The sacred level now sunken was once the home of earliest vegetation myth, and its religious thought is represented by the words from Upnishad, to which is identified in the notes. The poet has given a view of the church. It's no more a spiritual center. So in the next part of this poem, he is going to give us a view of alternative culture, quoting lines from Upnishad, repository of wisdom and knowledge. And there is also a beautifully circulated landscape visited by nourished by the sweet waters of the river called Ganga or Ganges. Then we hear the reverberation of thunder, of spring over distant mountains, which these words interpret. They are the condition for the promise of spring, which answers the doubts and denial expressed in the quest for the water of life. The quester continues even after having reached the mountain and the chapel. He doesn't find any sign of water. So he continues his quest, and now we hear the voice of Prajapati in the form of the onomatopic sound of thunder. So the echoes of the sounds are heard thrice. And these onomatopic sounds have a message or a meaning or a mantra for the renewal of life symbolized by spring. So first we listen to Prajapati's voice exhorting the gods, the humans and the demon. They are all the creation of Prajapati or Brahma. So we go to the quotation. We find the quotation from Upnishad, and we listen to the voice of Prajapati in the form of the echo of thunder. Chapel Palace was the place in Sir Thomas Malory's La Monte, the author, where Lancelot was tempted. A decaying chapel is described, and there on the top of the chapel, we hear with the quester the croaking of a crow. And crow is a symbol of a portent of change. And the moment the sound of crow is heard, one can see in the distance the sound of thunder bringing rain. So, curiously, no heroic figure has appeared to claim the grail. The renewal has come seemingly at random. Gratuitously, the quester feels happy as the cock crows and announces the end of the night and the return of light. The lightning flash brings with itself a shower of welcome rain. So finally, the quester has listened to and realized the wish. And these are the lines describing the chapel in this decayed hole among the mountains. In the faint moonlight, the grass is singing as if it's going to welcome the quester who has made an effort to come to. And I told you repeatedly, it's a questing sensibility. There is no heroic figure visible there. There is the empty chapel, only the winds home. Because the people have turned their back upon God and church, the place for God. It has no windows and the doors are swinging. So it's a decayed church with no windows. Dry bones can harm no one. But there is a reassurance in the line that these spirits which are lying there around the church in the cemetery, they can harm no one. Only a cock stood on the rooftop. So cock become the harbinger of the change. Cock become the messenger of rain. And finally the rains come on the scene in the flash of lightning, then a damp gust bringing rain. So no heroic figure has brought a change. It's a random voice of the cock that heralds the change. The temptation re-emerges as a theme. Can one remain spiritually pure and focused, or will the lure of the body become too strong? This is some of the question. The question denies their former meaning, and then, as with the Peter the cock crows, but as if in a French nursery rhyme, but only a weathercock stood on the rooftop in a flash of lightning, some critics believe, yet it's a legendary potent. If this is the storm of the legend, this weathercock on the wind's home serves to point its direction, even to herald the damp gusts bringing rain. So whether it's a cock, which is the reference in the poem, or as the critics presume it might be a weathercock, it's pointing a direction. And finally, bringing a rain, the sweet showers of rain, and now the scene changes from the Western world to the Eastern Ganges or Ganga. After all of this talk of waves, the thunder becomes audible. The description of the sunken Ganga invokes an alternative set of paradigm. To those of the Western world, they offer a glimpse into a culture and a new value system. So Ganga is a symbol of a goddess, and Upanishads are the repository of knowledge of this ancient culture. And the poet is trying to link Eastern and Western conception, Eastern and Western philosophy, because Sanskrit happens to be the mother language of all European languages. So Sanskrit words become the sign of redemption, and the poet links there the thunder's potential promise of rain leading to growth and life with a parallel promise of individual and social improvement. Ganga is a river and also the name of a river goddess who was fathered by Himavanta, the ruler of the Himalayan kingdom. The search in this part makes a journey that leads ultimately to the sacred river and its wisdom. And we listen here to the sound of Prajapati in the form of echo of the thunder. We listen to his voice as he speaks to his creation. But a short description is there of this holy river called Ganga or Ganges. Ganga was sunken and the leaves waited for rain. So Ganga has shrunken and it waits for the coming of spring and rain, while the black clouds gathered for descent. Over Himavanta, the jungle crouched, hummed in silence, then spoke the thunder. Having given a brief description of Ganga, he takes up the story of Prajapati from Brihadaranyaka Upnishad. Brihadaranyaka Upnishad is the source of this quotation in Sanskrit. So it's translated into, and there is a gloss in the form of a question. So we read it, and it's interpreted as datta, that means to give. If the gods can give their surplus, their superfluous wealth, there could be a change in the world, but they have not given, and what they have done is the description here, the dialogue here. What have we given, my friend, blood shaking my heart? The awful daring of a moment's surrender. So we have given ourselves to the call of lust. We have made an ignoble surrender only to the sexual instinct. So the spiritual message is ignored because there is a strong lure of the body. Hence the quester fails, or questing sensibility fails to answer the relevant question. Now, which an age of prudence can never retract, by this and this only we have existed. So we have survived only by listening to the call of the self, the bodily self, or lust. And we have fallen prey to the lure of lust only, which is not to be found in obituaries or memories draped by the beneficent spider, or under seal broken by the lean solicitor in our empty room. So there is no mention of this surrender in obituaries or in our daily commercial activities or in our wills broken by the lawyer or solicitor. So questioning sensibility has not been able to satisfy the questioning voice, and now we move to a description of a comment upon these lines. The Upnishad gives Eliot a chance to test the potential of the modern world. Asking what have we given, he finds that only time people give is in the sexual act. And this gift is ultimately destructive, evanescent. He associates it with the spider's webs and solicitor's reeling will. The poem speaker thus fails to find signs of giving. And if he cannot give or gives himself up in the form of a sexual act only, he cannot reach the goal, he cannot find peace in life, and he cannot hope for renewal or redemption. The title, What the Thunder Said, refers to the teaching of divine God Prajapati, which according to Brihadaranyaka Upnishad pointed out 3 ways of salvation. Here Eliot makes a final attempt of leading wastelander to a spiritual redemption. The quester should answer those questions, and he could not satisfy the questioning voice in the first attempt. So we listen to the voice of thunder again. This time it's meant for the human being, but there is a brief description of a summary of what has already been done. In the wasteland, Eliot sets himself to confront pride and arrogance, which enters into his work as a secondary theme, strikingly through symbolic figure of Coriolanus. So now the poet is quoting, making a reference to one of Shakespeare's greatest tragedy called Coriolanus, a symbol of self-conceit, arrogance and pride, and he was the man who ditched his own people, his Roman, though he was a Roman. So locked in the prison of the self, I have heard the key turn in the door once and turn once only, to lock, not to unlock. He recalls individuals so caught up in his or her own fate, each thinking only of the key to his own or her prison as to be obvious to anything but ethereal rumors of others. So wastelanders are confined, locked into their own self. They do not make any attempt to connect with the outside world out of arrogance, pride and self-conceit. They remain locked up. And this is the gloss there, Dwadham, that is to sympathize. So we can achieve redemption if we have learned to sympathize with the other, to live and enjoy a communal life. I have heard the key turn in the door once and turn once only. We think of the key each in his prison. Thinking of the key each confirms the prison. Only at nightfall ethereal rumors revive for a moment a broken Coriolanus. So we remain confined, self-locked, and make no attempt to reach others. It's only in the night we reflect upon this situation. But we don't change. And now a third dark, which is possibly in the original story was meant for the demons, that those should learn to control their instinct. But it's placed in a different context now, and we have some ray of hope spelled out in the form of an image here. It's the image of a boat. So life is compared to a boat, and it needs the power of wind and the power of water. So wind symbolizes the otherworldly power, and water for this worldly life. So wind and water can help the boat, and man should give himself up to the call of God, to the mercy of God. And this possibly is the hint in this closing statement, which is heard in the form of da, but it's interpreted as damyata, that is to control. The boat responded gaily to the hands expert with oar. So man will have to gain expertise. Gaily to the hand expert with sail and oar, the sea was calm, your heart would have responded. So in this tranquil sea, you could have responded. This is a possibility to the call of God, and you could have uttered the words in Bible, in thy will is my peace, thy will be done. So one must give oneself up, surrender oneself to the mercy of the God. This is the only way to seek redemption, nirvana, or peace of mind. The sea was calm, your heart would have responded gaily when invited, being obedient. But it has a condition. When you are invited by the divine power, you should be obedient to controlling hands. You should give yourself up to the divine power which controls, which is a cohesive force controlling the whole of the universe. So some kind of light is there at the tunnel. The tone is now less depressing but is melancholic. The question links life to an expert sail. The sea would always be calm because the boat is easily controlled by expert hand, and the spiritual wind and worldly waters are essential for smooth sail. A hint to surrender of self for redemption. It implies a series of dominating relationships, surrender of self that ultimately are never realized. Thank you.